For one, we will not allow the pinnacle of democracy or elections. Um, we will not allow the pinnacle of our democracy or elections to be used to spread disinformation and take away the Americans' constitutional right to vote. I would like to think that my vote will count for something when I do vote, which I've only voted twice in my life, midterms and last year. Um, More than 7 months have passed since Election Day. The Department of the Homeland Security, FBI, U.S. Cyber Command, and the Republican U.S. attorneys in the Justice Department have all said that the 2020 election was safe and secure. Yet, some elected officials continue to discredit the election results for their own political advantage. With more than 400 voter suppression bills introduced across the nation and election misinformation reaching a crescendo, the urgency to save our nation and democracy is palpable. But now, on top of it, all, we also have to contend with the emergence of fraudits. Fraudits, or basically, fraudit is another name for a fraudulent election audit. It started in Arizona, where the Republican legislators hired a partisan firm with no election experience whatsoever to conduct a faulty and secure audit. Um, what they might not have realized were the associated costs. Giving an unaccredited and inexperienced company access to voting equipment creates a major security issue, so much so that Arizona will likely need to spend more than $6 million to replace the compromised voting equipment. But the costs aren't just the fucking point. The point of the fraud is to erode the confidence in the 2020 election as a means to justify passing voter suppression bills so that politicians get to pick their voters instead of the other way around. The fraud is so popular that the Maricopa County arena hosting it is now a tourist destination for those seeking to replicate the fraudits around the country and they continue to attack on the fair elections. That's why we need immediate, bold action to save our democracy, and Congress must keep trying to pass what they call reform bills to protect America's rights to vote and strengthen our elections. We need to pass the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and we must ensure that people who believe in democracy are elected to serve as the chief election officers of their state as Secretary of State. The Democratic Secretaries of State have been on the front lines of debunking lies about the election, protecting our right to vote, and adopting measures to strengthen our election systems. In Arizona, Secretary of State Katie Hobbs has documented multiple irregularities arising from the sham audit in her state, and they pose such a deep security risk that she decided she would decertify the affected voting equipment. In Michigan, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson instructed election clerks not to allow unaccredited outside parties to conduct the unauthorized audits, while the GOP officials there pushed for a sham forensic audit of the 2020 election. In the home state of Colorado, some county election officials were being pressured at times with threats to conduct a fraudulent audit. So this one person took action. A week ago, they issued an election rule to prohibit unauthorized, inexperienced third parties from accessing the critical election infrastructure, thus prohibiting fraudits in Colorado. Only accredited people with background checks can access the voting systems. We will not allow the pinnacle of democracy or elections to be used to spread the disinformation and ultimately take away Americans' constitutional rights to vote. But not surprisingly, some of the big lie's biggest proponents, coming from people like the Colorado Representative Lauren Boebert, fucking nutcase, and to Texas Senator Ted Cruz, immediately spewed a litany of lies about whether we would allow election audits to be pursued at all. The actual truth is that Colorado's risk-limiting audits are bipartisan and the best election audits in the country, and we are the nation's gold standard for elections. But with the second highest turnout rate in America, in part thanks to reform by the office that has spearheaded to make Colorado elections the most secure and accessible in the nation. We have stopped fraudits in Colorado, but the attacks on democracy are not ending, and that's why in 2022 voters can play a big role in protecting voting rights by electing secretaries of state who will expand and not curb their access to the ballot box. And democracy will be on the ballot in battleground states, but where the same politicians who supported overturning the 2020 election results and who are advancing voter suppression bills are now running to become secretaries of state. As a nation, we are at a turning point and face a crucial question. Should eligible Americans get to choose their elected officials, and those who push And those who push voter suppression or the big lie are fraudits don't think so. But for me, the answer is a resounding yes. I hope it is for you too, because we must all lean in to protect our democracy, and for those who are actively attempting to end it.